On today's edition of movies that people are mad about for dumb reasons, we have Thor 4. Let's get into this topic and how, hey, it's okay to have a movie for children.
I wasn't aware people were angry about it.
It doesn't take much.
Honestly, after seeing Doctor Strange in the Multiverse of Madness, I thought it was a refreshing contrast.
Well, I liked Doctor Strange 2 more than you did.
Yes.
But anywho, we don't need to get. I'm not in the mood to regurgitate that. So
No. I will say that I watched the How It Should Have Ended, which for Doctor Strange 2, which I agree with and chuckled at.
Fair enough. But anyway, Thor 4, once again directed by Waititi, who is seeing a pretty big career resurgence and now is getting the inevitable internet backlash of whiny internet fanboys because of that. Because how dare your Norse god of thunder, who once participated in Dance Off with Luke Cage and Deadpool in the comics, not be taken 100% ultra serious. But anyway, this is another one of those dumb controversies where people are getting, like, I guess we're at that stage of the MCU success where people are just actively waiting for it to fail, for one reason or another. Mostly because hanging the popular thing is some people that just everyone hinges their entire identities around, and especially since Waititi is becoming known for being like queer friendly and like has women in his movies. All of a sudden, that's why he's bad now. It's an unfortunate trend about this movie. Got kind of caught in the shuffle of that. Now, granted, this one has kind of divided people just on general, just based on like how much the humor and the tone and everything else kind of mesh with you. But for the most part, I liked it. I thought it was good. It was entertaining.
I of the Phase 4 MCU film entries thus far, this is probably my number 2 after Spider-Man No Way Home.
Okay. I don't know if I put it that high. But I do think it's a good movie. Because I honestly put like Shang-Chi above this if I had to pick one. But anywho, I think one thing that I was talking to a coworker about this, because like I think this movie is not as like well paced and like well-rounded as like Ragnarok was.
Agreed.
Like I think if you put the two together, I think Ragnarok is just a more complete film when you look at it on its face.
Yes.
But
it has a more focused story.
It has a more focused story, but this is a big but. I did feel more hopeful after watching this one than I did Ragnarok. That's for a very specific reason.
Well, it does help that between the two that Ragnarok ends with the obliteration of Asgard.
It's not just that though. I get it's a fair point, but it's like that's not quite the same reasoning though. It's because this movie acknowledges a very important piece to not just the MCU, but superheroes in general, that a lot of these movies tend to either avoid dealing with or actively pretend isn't the case. And that is, and this is not in a derogatory or condescending fashion, these characters are for kids. Like, we all know that, right? Like, this is not a secret. And this movie very explicitly and very clearly says, yes, these are characters and stories for children. They're meant to give people like heroes to want to idolize and be like and amplify, whatever the word is. Like
empathize?
Not empathize, but
emulate.
Emulate. Yes, that's what I'm looking for. Yeah, so like that is practically the entire point of these characters in these comic book universes. Now, that being said, that does not mean as an adult you cannot like them or that it's childish to like them.
Most of the books on my shelf are children's books.
Yeah, exactly. But the point is, like, there's an unhealthy attachment that a lot of comic book people fans have that, oh, if you make something explicit that's for children, that means I'm a child if I like it, and therefore like, or things that children like can't be good, therefore must be bad. It's this very binary thinking behind it when the actual topic is much more nuanced. And this movie kind of delves into that in a fair, like to a pretty fair degree. The entire movie is framed as a story being told to children by Korg.
Yes, he's the narrator, or
Yeah, he is the narrator, but like the movie pulls pretty heavily to just scenes with children, like as they're being talked to by either like the heroes and villains, and how they kind of see things and interpret the world around them. And like that's a big piece of the story. So and when you kind of look from that framework, everything around it, even the most silliest elements which some people kind of criticize, kind of come into focus in that way.
I do have a critique, or a minor critique for Thor's character in this installment.
Mm-hmm.
I feel like he got a negative modifier on his intelligence score. He has some of the worst speeches and cringiest dialogue in the franchise thus far.
I mean, it's kind of by design, I would say.
I certainly hope so. In that case, it was very effective.
I mean, Thor's never been the smartest person in the bunch.
No.
Yeah, he becomes Kane, but it's like the whole like his arrogance and all that kind of stuff plays into it. Like all that stuff has always been part of the character. He is definitely told more goofy than he typically is portrayed like in the comics. But that being said, this is not out of this world, out of characteristic for him. I'm realizing I'm jumbled up a lot today, so bear with me, guys. It's been a long fucking week.
For me too. There's a lot going on that's unrelated to fluffy entertainment like this.
Exactly. I mean, like that being said, I feel like the more like cringy dialogue in here is entirely intentional. Again,
Okay.
the whole point is to say like, hey, when all is said and done, this is a character for kids. This is a story for kids. Thor is supposed to be kind of silly and like kind of regressive a little bit, but I will also argue that's by design, considering that, you know, regressing is a part of just the series of traumas.
Yes.
So even like that stuff I can look past. But again, we'll get to this when we're talking about spoilers, because it does play into how it plays in the third act. But even like the sillier elements and the sillier components of it do eventually lead to a more serious hard heel turn towards the third act, and how that kind of plays into it. And I think Waititi is always very, very good at those kind of heel turns of like, okay, here's the comedy bits. Yes, it's silly, possibly a little too silly, depending on how much you can tolerate it. But then you're going to have these, like, it's all going to make the more darker moments stand out all the more. He did this to Ragnarok, which people don't give him enough credit for. And it's in this movie as well. That being said, I do definitely see a lot of criticism of the first act, because it definitely feels like it's very much of the, okay, here are the leftovers from Endgame I don't really know what to do with.
A bit, yeah.
So I'm just gonna just kind of do what I need to with them, and then kind of shove them aside as soon as possible.
Apparently, there's another movie or two's worth of footage that was shot that we'll never seen. If Taika Waititi were to have used all of the footage, we could have had a 4-hour film, but we'll never. He said that we'll never see his director's cut,
which is I'm perfectly fine with. I always feel like, especially after the goddamn Snyder cut fiasco, there's a whole fetishization of director's vision, and like they have all this footage they never used, and it's all masterful. It's like it probably wasn't. That's why it got cut. So like if he's saying we don't deserve,
it probably didn't serve the story that he wanted to tell in this film.
He said it mostly it was mostly just a lot of funny footage that eventually just didn't go anywhere and didn't feel like it just slowed things down. That's the way he cut it.
That makes sense.
So I was like, yeah. So by that basis, like, I don't need to see a 4-hour cut of this movie. I don't.
I was actually surprised at how short it was.
Yeah, it's a brisk 2 hours.
Yes.
And it goes at a pretty steady pace. But I do at
least up until the end a little.
I don't know. I felt the pacing of the ending was fine. Didn't really bother me. But where was I going with this? Oh yeah. But yeah, like I think it's also nice to see Natalie Portman having a good time in this role for the first time ever. That was nice
Yes,
to see.
it's nice that they actually gave her something more to do instead of just fridging her.
Yeah, exactly. So like you could well, not quite the correct term of the use of the term fridging.
Sorry. Uh, well, like she she was more of a plot device or a second banana in
Sure, but fridging a character means killing the character for the sake of making the man's story more tragic. Um,
that is a mm,
a little bit in this story, I will give it that. Fair. But that being said, that doesn't mean the character could not stand on her own, which she does.
yes, which I am glad of. Don't misunderstand. It was really good to see her have a character and a character arc and have things to do and have motivations and internal conflicts. I loved that.
Yeah, and I think the modification made to Mjolnir were cool to watch. The action scenes were a lot of fun for that reason. Christian Bale is having a great fucking time, chewing as much scenery as possible. He's fucking great. So anytime he's on screen, there's always like he really does have that just great villainous air to it. And I knew this character is never going to come back, but it's still cool to see him at one time.
Yes, yes. He's very good at looking very sickly.
Yeah, very sickly and very sinister, very much exactly what Gore the God Butcher needed to be. Like for the most part, everyone does it. Like I really appreciated Russell Crowe as Zeus. I got a good laugh
That's
at him.
who that was. Okay.
Yeah, that was Russell Crowe. Honestly,
I think that's probably the best thing I've seen him in since The Nice Guys.
yeah, probably. Honestly, and I'll talk more about the scene later because it goes to spoiler territory. But I did really enjoy his interpretation of it, and honestly, kind of the most like Greek lore accurate portrayal of Zeus, probably.
Probably, yes.
Even though that's also got dude bros mad, like, but he's not an image of masculinity. But like, yeah, but Zeus is a rapist douchebag.
I remember in one of our season 2 reviews, Wes put it best that most of Greek myth can be traced back to Zeus not being able to keep it in his pants.
Oh my god, was that fucking Hercules movie?
Yes.
Oh my god, I completely forgot about that. Like the lightning penis sword was an in joke for a long fucking time. Jesus Christ, I'm doing this for a long time.
Yes, we have.
Anywho, no lightning penis sword. Well, that I could spot in this movie.
No, at least not nearly as long.
Probably not. But yeah, on the whole, like it's definitely not as well put to like as what's what I'm looking for. Well constructed as Ragnarok is. But that being said, I do think this one honestly has a stronger point to make than the first one does. And it does, again, I feel like highlight a very important but less talked about element of these characters and these stories. It's something I've been saying for years. So it's very personally validating of just saying like, hey guys, it's okay if you enjoy this stuff. It's great. They're meant to be good stories to enjoyed by everyone, but do not lose the focus. These are stories for kids. These are fables. These are parables. This is modern day mythology. These are all meant to teach kids moral lessons and give people heroes to aspire to. That's the whole point. And that's the whole point of this movie is like learning to become like the people you aspire to be and the best parts of who they are. And that a rejection of that doesn't do you any favors. Or pretending like heroes don't matter. Or taking them too seriously doesn't actually matter. So of course, with all that in mind, I understand completely why dude bros are angry online about this movie. But I think it's a stance that we need more often with these characters, and I think that we neglect the importance that these characters have for children. Because I would take a cartoony Thor movie over an ultra serious Batman movie any day of the fucking week.
I did like the Batman
I
earlier.
did too, but I have no desire to watch it ever again. I will probably watch this at least one more time.
That's fair. This movie goes at a brisker pace and is more colorful.
It's more colorful, there's more heart to it, and there's honestly just more interesting stuff about it than with the Batman, which takes itself self-serious to the point of parody, in my opinion. That movie has not aged well in my head.
It's only like 6 months old.
That's a long time in our universe, Sarah. There's a lot of movies between that and this that kind of make it age a little faster, to be fair.
Okay, true.
But yes, I don't know. I feel like, especially Batman's another character that I feel like has kind of been co-opted by dude bros over the years, where it's like, guys, there has been at least a dozen Batman animated cartoons out there, like TV shows meant for kids. We don't need this all the fucking time.
I watched the animated Batman series when I was a kid.
Yes, and that's actually a good point to make up to, because Star Wars has the same problem, where people get attached to these characters when they're kids and they grow up, but they become upset that the characters and the stories don't grow up with them, that they still relatively aimed at that age demographic. And Star Wars has the exact same problem. It's more like, you're not upset because these characters don't take themselves seriously. You want to. You're upset that the franchise didn't age with you, isn't in catering specifically to you. So in the same vein of like Batman or Thor or the Guardians of the Galaxy or Spider-Man is another one that gets a lot of flack for some of the reasons. As yes, these are you find these characters important to you, these stories important to you. That is good, and you should cherish that. However, don't think that means you get to rob it from the next generation. So there's my little milk crate monologue moment there.
All right.
So let's go into spoilers a little bit, because there is some stuff I want to talk about.
Spoiler warning here.
Yeah, spoiler warning here. So, but on the whole, we both recommend it.
Yes.
Yeah, I do just want to appreciate probably one more honest interpretation of what God culture would be like in these kind of universes.
You're not invited to the orgy.
Pretty much, where it's it's less about we need to deal with these serious threats that's threatening all of life in the world. You guys, we need to get on this. Okay, who's hosting the orgy? Let's all get in there. And again, totally on brand for Zeus.
Yes, very much so.
It's exactly what Zeus would do. He'd be like, I'm gonna be a swan for this one, that's fucking Zeus. And people get upset, oh, it's too silly. It's but that's what gods would fucking do. I know it's absurd to make that critique in this kind of movie, but the point is I feel like people get the interpretation of what gods are actually like in mythology.
There was an entire Greek god devoted to the growing and consuming of wine.
Yeah, when you really look at any kind of mythology that involves gods, they're all pretty silly.
Yes.
No matter how seriously you want to take them, they're all silly. And yes, I'm including Christianity in that too. I'm gonna get paid for that. But because Jesus Christ, miracle party tricks, 1 to 1, bitches, let's get drunk.
Sorry, that reminded me of something that happened at work today. A God Squad customer came in and told my boyfriend and I that he needed to have a relationship with Jesus, and he needed to talk to Jesus, and Jesus would talk to him, and if he didn't do that, then he wouldn't get into heaven.
Yeah, that sounds on brand for that particular religion. Yeah, been hearing that my whole fucking life.
So, I mean, I've always considered myself to be more spiritual than religiously observant.
I'm more agnostic, but yeah, I'm in a similar boat. Yeah.
But
anyway, I feel like that's a serious topic for
on the outside looking in. That type of spiel sounds kind of silly.
It is all very silly. Uh, it's very, very, very silly. But just so I don't get a bunch of hate comments by Christians, let's move on. They're gonna hate me anyway because I said I like the movie. God forbid. But yeah, so the whole plot of this movie is that Gore the God Butcher, played by Christian Bale, wants to find eternity, which is cool to see that finally played out in live action. Eternity is something from the comics.
I was wondering about that.
It is one they are one of many like big cosmic entities of that ilk that exist as like actual people.
So it's not just a MacGuffin.
No, it's well, it is, but it's also like there's a what's what I'm looking for. God, I'm tired. There it is based off something from the comics.
Okay.
And there's a bunch of other ones I'm sure they're going to introduce at some point. I'm sure there's probably some homages and callbacks to them throughout the movie or through that whole sequence or whatever. But anyway, so yeah, like Gore abducts a bunch of kids specifically to lure out Thor because Stormbreaker has the Bifrost, which can get to where he needs to go to unlock eternity and make a wish to destroy all gods because he lost his daughter.
And his gods basically abandoned him.
Yeah, which isn't that far off the map in the comics. In the comics, it's actually much darker. It isn't that Gore's daughter dies. Gore doesn't have a daughter in the book. It's more of Gore just slowly watches all his friends and family just kind of slowly waste away, praying to gods, and then eventually like he does observe like two gods fighting. That's when he realizes it's all kind of pointless and meaningless, and he don't care. Mm-hmm. Fun fact about his sword. I forget the sword. What the name of the sword is?
Oh, it was something blade. I don't remember.
I'm gonna Google it because it's gonna bug me. The Necro Sword.
That's it.
The Necro Sword. The Necro Sword has a very interesting connection to Spider-Man of all people.
Really?
Because the Necro Sword was originally wielded by Null, who is the god of the symbiotes.
I thought the shadows that came out of it looked somewhat reminiscent of that.
Yeah. So Null is like one of the first beings in the universe before the Celestials came in and started messing with things, and he, like the god of like the planet of symbiotes, I think it's called Clintar or something like that, was kind of created out of like as a prison specifically for him. It's a whole convoluted thing. It gets kind of ridiculous, but again, comics. You this is the shit you're in for. But yeah, in the books, it's more like Gore like creates a family out of like the Necro Sword, basically, which eventually gets absorbed back into him when he fails because of timey-wimey shit. Because he's like defeated by three, like a past, present, and future version of Thor. It gets wacky. It's a good story though. But anyway, so it does play a little differently than it does in the movie. Although Jane's fate is more or less the same.
Okay.
Where she gets Mjolnir when she gets diagnosed with cancer, and her whole arc is basically like serving heroic life and deciding like whether or not to keep being Thor despite the fact it's killing her faster. Yeah, and then she eventually dies and go to Valhalla like she does in the movie. So all that part by and large tracks. A lot of the stuff with the kids is like I don't think Idris Elba's character Heimdall has a son. That's a creation for the movie, which I'm personally okay with. His introduction was a bit cheesy, but that's kind of like again for kids. I can get past that.
Yeah,
keep the target audience in mind. That being said, worked really well. Like I really appreciate Gore's little puppet show with the kids in the fucking demented Muppet thing. I thought that was a pretty cool scene.
That was sufficiently creepy. Yes.
Yeah, and I did also, and I kind of everything I was talking about kind of does culminate in that final fight scene where he does give all the kids like the power of Thor for a little time.
That was probably my favorite sequence of the film, and I loved that they used honestly the best part of that particular GNR song
Yeah.
as the score for that sequence, and I loved that the little girl was going
With the
with
teddy bear. Yep.
yes, and I also thought that was probably Thor's best dialogue or some of his best dialogue in the movie when he told them to pick up whatever you can hold.
Yeah. And like again, I think that kind of brings home everything I was talking about, which is again that at the end of the day, this is a character for kids, and everything he does and say is in relation to his relationship with these kids.
Yes.
And that's again, what was the word I forgot earlier? I am so out of it today. Emulate. And the whole, like, they literally emulate him towards the end. They all become like their hero, Thor. Again,
yes.
that's the whole point. That's what brings it all home. And I'm not saying you don't know this. I'm explaining it to dumb people who don't understand the point of the movie. Not all of you are dumb. Some of you are very nice people, I'm sure. But I'm just irritated by internet culture.
Thank you for watching this internet show.
I'd like to think we're the nicer corner, or at least the more sane that doesn't rely on hate grifters to actually make profit.
Yes.
Anyway, but yeah, so like that's like any other director at any other time trying to take in that same scene probably would have fucked it up. Like, if we're being completely honest, like the setup is really cheesy. It's very 90s kids action sequence.
But it's fun.
But like Taika Waititi makes it work against all odds. He makes it work, and it's legitimately the best scene in the movie because it does really carry that feeling of, again, childhood empowerment. You are your hero. You get to fight alongside him. That's, again, especially as a kid watching this, that's fucking cool. And I know if I was a kid watching this, I would lose my shit at that. Because again, like I still do a lot of kids parties, stuff like that. I see kids emulate this shit all the time. And like Thor's hammer comes up a lot in that conversation, and kids get really into it. So to kind of just make it explicit that, like, hey, this is the point. This is what we're here for. And that's a good thing. That's a good thing we're doing this. It's a good thing we're here to give them the gift of heroes.
Yes.
And also what it means to be a hero, and like what sacrifice really means in doing the right thing. Those are all important things for kids to learn. It's a good thing for adults to learn. So like for all of those reasons, I'm repeating myself too often. I think that's why I really do deeply appreciate this movie, even though I do acknowledge it's not perfect.
It has some flaws, which I alluded to earlier. But like I also said, it's probably my second favorite Phase 4 film entry so far.
Yeah, I think I need to rewatch it to kind of see where it kind of goes on my ranking. But I like, more I talk about it, the more I think about it, the more I do really appreciate it. And I think it is going to stand the test of time, more than me right now. And yeah, honestly, make a Thor 5. Like, let Taika finish his trilogy.
I'm down for it.
Yeah, like, let him do whatever he wants at this point. Clearly, he still makes money out of it. They made their budget back in a weekend. So.
That, and after Thor 2, Chris Hemsworth was rather tired of not having fun playing this part. And
when he's having all the fun.
Yeah, and that's what Taika Waititi promised him. It's like, okay, you want to have fun at work? Let's have fun at work.
Yeah, and I like the angle I take on towards the end of him, like, giving him a daughter character and letting him kind of play off that idea. And it does seem to be a reoccurring theme throughout Phase 4 of passing the baton or becoming, like, taking on a more parental role. And
mentoring the next generation. A lot of seeds have been planted for Young Avengers.
Yeah, of course. Well, it's not just saying the seeds, is more just like, what is Phase 4 actually about? Even though I'm kind of always getting annoyed when people ask that question, because, like, it doesn't need to be about anything. It can just be what it is. But if there is a common thread through all of it, it's that, hey, these are the next generation. We need to focus on them because they're the people that are going to take on what we couldn't do.
Yeah, they're going to carry on the mantle.
Yeah, like, again, like Miss Marvel just wrapped up last week, and that was like, and that touched on a very similar thread. I'm sure
I haven't watched the last episode yet.
no spoilers. But it does end very well.
That's what I've heard.
Yeah, so like, and again with a Hawkeye or Doctor Strange 2, whatever your feelings might be on that one. Even No Way Home to a certain extent kind of touched on that a bit.
Yes.
But just the idea is very, very clear of just like, hey, younger people matter, and it's okay to acknowledge that they matter.
Yes.
In fact, it's important that you do, regardless of what age they may be. So I think that's all I really have to say about this. Was anything else you wanted to add on to that I may have missed?
No, I told you before we started recording, I saw this about a week ago, so my take isn't quite as thorough as yours. So I've said basically what I wanted to. I appreciated the GNR soundtrack. that was a lot of fun, and during what we agree is probably the best sequence of the film, they used the guitar solo from November Rain, which is, in my opinion, the best part of that particular song. The rest of it is a little long and kind of whiny, but Slash's guitar solo is one of the best. Good pace. Yes, not every joke necessarily lands on both feet, but I enjoyed it. It was a good time.
Yeah. I think this, once the internet hysteria kind of dies down a bit, I think it's going to be like in a much better light in the long run. But yeah, like despite like it does, like I said, not everything lands, but the positives definitely outweigh the negatives, and I do think like this one I'm gonna enjoy rewatching on multiple occasions. So I think it's all I really have to say on that. Next week's gonna be a little spotty because I am leaving for Comic-Con on Wednesday.
They're actually doing it in person.
They are, yes. And I will be there. So if you see me there, say hi. In the meantime, I think we're gonna try to like maybe cover Marcel the Shell with shoes on.
Oh, I really want to see that. That's not playing in my area.
Yeah, but beyond that, I don't know what I'm gonna do. So thank you guys for watching, and we'll see you all next time. Take care.